The Soviet authorities regarded the Catholic Church as their enemy. It was already in the Tsarist times that we, Lithuanians, rallied for freedom led by the Church. That is why, at the time of the first occupation, the Soviets were at pains at annihilating it. The Church was robbed of many of its lands and buildings, and many priests were deported. When the war broke out, we were shocked to hear that retreating Soviets martyred 15 clergymen. After Lithuania found itself in the Soviet Union for the second time, they resumed their dirty activities. They demanded that bishops denounce guerrillas and urge freedom fighters to surrender. When the bishops refused to do so, one of them, the Bishop of Telšiai, Vincentas Borisevičius, was arrested and shot in 1946. Others, Pranas Ramanauskas, Teofilius Matulionis and Mečislavas Reinys, were deported to Siberia. Thus only one bishop, the Bishop of Panevėžys Kazimieras Paltarokas, was left in Lithuania. About one-third of Lithuania's priests were deported, and by 1953 only half of all the clergy remained in the country. Under Stalin, the Catholic Church tried first and foremost to survive. Although it refused to cooperate with the Soviets, it never resisted them openly. That was an attempt to avoid even fiercer repressions. In 1957, however, the Soviet authorities started imposing their dogmas of atheism on us, denying the existence of God. Soon they nationalized a church in Klaipėda, which we had built with our own money. They used bulldozers to even out the Hill of Crosses near Šiauliai and blew up the Hill of Three Crosses in Vilnius. Willing to see fewer priests, they closed the Telšiai and Vilkaviškis seminaries, leaving only the one operating in Kaunas. But even here, fewer and fewer clerics were allowed to enter the institution. Their number fell from 350 to 55. When the old priests died, there were fewer and fewer younger priests who could replace them. Besides, all Lithuanian monasteries and convents were closed in 1947, and religious orders were prohibited. More than that, the Soviets proclaimed that churches were state property. The majority of them were closed for good. In this way, we lost more than 100 churches. Extremely few of them were left in our major cities. In Vilnius only 12 of the 38 were left, and in Kaunas 8 out of 17. The closed churches would be turned into art galleries, like the Vilnius Cathedral, for example, or museums of atheism, or simply warehouses. Believers could rent the rest of the churches only for large payments. Nevertheless, the Soviets failed to break the Catholic Church. From 1972, priests were trained in illegal seminaries. At the same time, there were 1,500 monks and 12 monasteries were in operation. And since 1964, the Catholic Church started resisting the Soviet persecution by legal means. Thousands of Lithuanians signed petitions requesting freedom of faith. We request the Soviet government to grant us the freedom of conscience, which is provided for in the Soviet constitution, but so far has never been ensured. That was written in one of the petitions, which was handed to the leader of the Soviet Union, Leonid Brezhnev. The underground publication of the Church, the Chronicle of the Catholic Church, whose publication started in 1972, became a legend. It informed Lithuania and the entire world about Soviet repressions and persecution of believers. In 1983, when the editor of the Chronicle, Sigitas Tamkevičius, was arrested, its publication was taken over by Reverend Jonas Boruta. Many supporters helped with the distribution of the publication, especially nuns Nijolė Sadūnaitė, Elena Šuliauskaitė, and Bernadeta Mališkaitė. Soviet KGB never managed to suppress the underground press of the Lithuanian Catholic Church. The Chronicle of the Catholic Church was issued down to the beginning of the National Revival movement in 1989. In 1978, 5 priests, Alfonsas Varinskas, Sigitas Tamkevičius, Juozas Debskis, Jonas Kauneckas, and Vincentas Vėlavičius, had the nerve of establishing an openly operating organization to defend believers' rights. It was called Catholic Committee for the Defense of Believers' Rights. The main task of the committee was to monitor whether the Soviet Union abided by the international agreements and at the same time to explain to believers their rights and to defend them. The Soviet authorities did not dare stop the openly operating committee. Only in 1983, after 2 committee members, Alfonsas Varinskas and Sigitas Tamkevičius, were arrested, the others agreed to stop the committee's activities. True, in the case of Juozas Debskis, the persecution was continued until he died in mysterious circumstances in 1986. In 1984–85, the Soviet KGB succeeded in disuniting the majority of Catholic movement members. Some years later, however, at the outset of the National Revival period, the spiritual leaders of the Catholic Church joined it as well. believers recovered Vilnius Cathedral in 1989, and in 1990 the Act of the Restitution of the Status of Catholic Church in Lithuania was passed. That was the end of the decades-long battle for the right to profess the Catholic faith without any restrictions.